the true story of this grandmother. After my mom's death, my dad revealed his dark secret. Erasma's world shattered the day her mother died. At 73, living in a small Midwest town where everyone knew your name and your business, she suddenly found herself trapped under her father's suffocating shadow. Mr. Antoner wasn't just an old man fading into retirement. He was a prison warden in her life, ruthless and cold. After Mom was gone, his true face showed up, the bruises she tried to hide, the cruel words sharp enough to cut. And now he demanded she care for him as if she were still a little girl, a role she'd never wanted, one soaked in pain and fear. Erasma's hands trembled as she scrubbed the floor late into the night, every creak of the old wooden house echoing like a warning. Sometimes, just when she thought the silence would bring peace, her father's voice would slice through the air like a rusty blade. "You're nothing without me," he snarled one chilly October evening, the shadows on his face twisting into something monstrous. She swallowed her tears, chest tight, desperate to disappear. But then something strange started to happen. It was small at first. Mrs. Jurema, her kind neighbor, began slipping notes under Erasma's door, cryptic words of hope and plans whispered like secrets. And there was Benny, a gentle young man at the local market with eyes full of kindness and a smile that thawed the frozen parts of Erasma's heart. They met quietly in the cool shade of the apple orchard, where Benny pressed a crumpled map into her palms. "There's a way out," he promised, voice low and urgent. The tension mounted. Mr. Antoner growled more often, his watchful gaze like ice on her skin. Every echo in the house made her jump. Every knock at the door sent her heart racing. But the night she slipped away, the small town swallowed her shadow and hope flickered brighter than fear. Erasma, with Mrs. Jurema's bakery order in one hand and Benny's battered suitcase in the other, disappeared toward a new city, under the quiet protection of Mrs. Terazinha, a friend from the past, who promised safety and a fresh start. Yet even as skyscrapers rose around her, and the noise drowned out the small-town ghosts, the absence of Benny clawed at her heart. The memory of his smile and the map's folds haunted her nights like a ghost she couldn't shake. Then, just when she believed the past was finally behind her, 11 years later, a cold knock shattered the fragile calm. Mr. Antoner had resurfaced, dark and looming, threatening to drag her back into the nightmare. The police got involved. But in a twist nobody saw coming, Mr. Antoner was found dead in his cell, his history of abuse unraveling into whispers and chilling secrets. Now, standing alone, Erasma wrestled with a storm of pain and relief. Could freedom erase scars no one saw? And more terrifyingly, could she use her pain to break the chains binding women like her? Her resolve wavered, torn between safety and the weight of new battles. Then came a secret, a shadow darker than anything before, that threatened to shatter the fragile world she'd built. What was this secret, and how deep did the darkness go? Hey, before you continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. Standing alone, Erasma felt the weight of her past congeal into a tight ball in her chest. She wanted to believe that Mr. Antoner's death meant she could finally breathe easy. But reality clung to her like a damp fog, refusing to lift. The echo of his threats still lingered, shadows in every corner. As she stood on the balcony, looking out over the bustling streets below, she heard laughter, a sound sharp and bright, like cut glass on the air. Distant sirens pierced the evening. It felt like a foghorn, calling her back to a time she desperately wanted to forget. With each new sound, panic drummed in her ears. But then, a knock on the door jolted her heart. Her breath caught. She wasn't expecting anyone. Not today. Not after everything that happened. Slowly, she crept to the door, her heart racing. She glanced through the peephole, but only blackness greeted her, as if a shadow had swallowed the world around her. "Who is it?" she called, her voice trembling. "It's me," came a familiar voice, Benny. Relief washed over her, calming and warm like a gentle rain. But something in his tone felt off. Unease twisted inside her as she opened the door. Benny stood there, not the gentle man she remembered. His eyes were wild, panic etched deep into his brow. "Erasma, we need to go now." "What happened?" She stammered, her pulse quickening. "There's no time, your father's influence. It's not over. The people he wronged didn't just disappear." His voice cracked with urgency. "There's been a rumor about a woman, a witness." A cold chill ran through her. A woman? A witness to what? The darkness of her past clawed at her mind. "Benny, what are you talking about?" Before he could respond, the air shattered with the sound of shattering glass. Erasma's heart leaped into her throat. She turned toward the direction of the noise, and that was the moment everything changed. Outside, chaos erupted. People screamed and fires blazed in the distance. She pulled Benny inside and closed the door, trembling as the world outside erupted into disarray. "What's going on?" She gasped, fear paralyzing her voice. He looked her dead in the eye. "You have to trust me. The police, they've uncovered something about your past. What could be worse than my father?" Her stomach twisted as thoughts raced. Then it hit her, Mrs. Jurema. Her notes, her plans, all of it suddenly felt like a trap. Benny stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "They found your mother's diary. She left everything, the truth of what he did to her and to you." The ground dropped from beneath her, her world tilted. What truth? A sharp knock on the door sent them both jumping. Erasma's heart was in her throat. "Open up, it's the police." The voice was strong, but it sent a ripple of dread through her stomach. Benny turned to her, fear etched in every line on his face. "We need to go now." "No," she cried, her breath fast and shallow. "What about my mother?" "Your mother may have been part of something worse. You don't understand. We must leave before it's too late." Panic surged in his eyes. Just then, another voice broke through, steady and chilling. "We know you're in there, Erasma. Open the door and we can help you. Or you can end up just like your father." Her breath hitched. The doors of her past were swinging wide open, darkness spilling in. Could she trust Benny? Or had he been tangled in this web all along? What had her mother hidden? Was she really ready for the answers? Terror mixed with a fragile spark of curiosity. She thought she could turn her back on her past. But now it had come back to reclaim her. As Erasma stood there, caught between the haunting echoes of her past and Benny's urgent plea, the tension in the air felt electric. She swallowed hard, her heart racing. "What do you mean about the police finding my mother's diary?" Her voice was barely a whisper, fear clawing at her throat. Benny moved closer, his eyes wide with alarm. "We don't have time to talk about this here. Just trust me, please." Another sharp knock rattled the door. "Open up, we're coming in." The authoritative voice sent a jolt through her. She glanced at Benny, who nodded toward the window. "We need to escape. Now, they're not here to help." Just then, an explosion erupted outside. The world shook. Erasma gasped as debris rained down, the sound echoing like thunder in her ears. Through the window, she saw chaos unfold. A cloud of smoke billowed from a nearby building, flames licking the sky. People ran in all directions, faces twisted in fear. "Go!" Benny urged, grabbing her hand. She felt his grip tighten, and in that moment she knew she had to choose. They dashed toward the fire escape at the end of the narrow hallway. But before she could step onto the fire escape, a body slammed against the door, splintering it open with a force that knocked Erasma back. A figure loomed in the doorway, drenched in shadows. It took her a second to process who stood there, heart thundering in her chest. "Mr. Antoner," the name escaped her lips in disbelief. But the man staring back was not the frail old man from her memories. He looked revitalized, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "Surprised, aren't you?" His voice dripped with mockery. "Did you really think you could escape me forever?" Panic surged through Erasma. You're dead." The words felt weak even as they left her mouth. He stepped into the room, the light catching glints of something shiny in his hand, a gun. "Think again, my dear. I've been playing a long game." Benny stepped in front of her, arms raised. "Stay back, you're not taking her." Mr. Antoner chuckled, a low, chilling sound. "You poor boy, you have no idea what you're up against." Without warning, Benny lunged. aiming for the gun, but Mr. Antoner was quicker. A shot rang out. Time slowed. Erasma's breath caught, and she felt as if the world was closing in on her, a vice around her chest. Benny collapsed to the floor, shock and betrayal etched across his face. "Erasma," he gasped, eyes wide, fading fast. "No!" Erasma cried, rushing to his side. The vibrant warmth of their shared moments surged through her mind, memories of laughter and hope collapsing like a house of cards. Mr. Antoner stood over them, smirking at the scene. "Your mother hid so much, you know, the things she wrote about me, about you." He grinned, revealing a twisted satisfaction. "It all comes crashing back now, doesn't it?" Erasma felt a frantic pulse in her veins. What did she write? What truths? He leaned closer, a predatory glint in his eye. "You think your escape was so simple, you'll find out soon enough. The truth is far darker than you can imagine." As the sirens wailed closer, Erasma locked eyes with Benny, whose strength was slipping away. Healing lies on the other side of pain, the thought flashed in her mind, heart racing. The world around her twisted into a chaotic blur, her father's haunting words, Benny's fading breath. Could she rise from the ashes of the past, or was she forever bound to it? In that moment, the realization hit her hard. The truth she sought was not just buried. It was explosive, dangerous, and it would change everything she thought she knew. Before she could voice her questions, another explosion erupted, this time shaking the very foundation of her new life. Erasma's heart raced as the floor beneath her gave way. Where would she land? What would she discover in that smoke and fire? As the floor beneath her gave way, Erasma felt a rush of adrenaline. She barely registered Benny's fading voice, his pain resonating like a death knell in her ears. Time seemed to slow as debris cascaded around her, and she instinctively reached out for him, but it was too late. The world twisted into chaos, and a deafening roar enveloped them. But as she stumbled backward, something incredible happened. The explosion had not only revealed the turmoil outside, but also the very ground on which they stood. A hidden panel in the floor cracked open, revealing a dark staircase spiraling down into the earth, lined with flickering lights that pulsed ominously. Erasma's instincts screamed for her to run, to escape, but before she could think, Mr. Antoner lunged forward, his face a mask of rage. "You think you can flee from me?" He spat, his gun still trained on Benny, who groaned in pain. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty, a palpable entity. Erasma felt the weight of generations on her shoulders. She could hear the sirens drawing nearer, and her heart raced wildly. "Benny, we have to go," she managed to yell, glancing back at the open darkness below. Benny, his breath shallow, gave her a determined nod. "I'll be fine. Just trust me," he wheezed. But she saw the blood pooling beneath him, the life slowly draining from his terrified face. Mr. Antoner, momentarily distracted, snarled and turned, his gaze zeroing in on the shadows creeping out from under the broken floor. There was a shift, a pause in his madness as the ground trembled again, the hidden staircase still beckoning. Then it happened, an incredible, shocking thing. From the shadows emerged a figure. A woman, her face obscured by the debris and smoke, pushed forward, a wild determination fueling her movements. Erasma squinted through the dust and suddenly recognized the silhouette. "Mom." She gasped, disbelief tightening her throat. The woman, Karen, a vision from the past, her mother's eyes ablaze with a fury Erasma had never known. You thought you could erase me," she shouted, her voice commanding the chaos. "You don't control her anymore, Antoner." Erasma's breath hitched. This was impossible. "Mom, I don't understand." But there was no time to explain. Her mother moved faster, and with every step toward Mr. Antoner, the shadows of her past started to peel away, revealing flickers of a life Erasma had wondered about for years. Memories of warmth, laughter, and her mother's gentle touch flooded her mind, twisting into something darker, something she'd never truly grasped. "You think you can leave her with that monster?" "No," Karen shouted again. "She is stronger than you ever believed." Mr. Antoner's smirk twisted into a grimace. "You're supposed to be dead." He spat, panic mixing with fury. A flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes, and it ignited a glimpse of vulnerability. And then, as if the ground itself had aligned with her mother's fury, the hidden staircase erupted to life. The pale lights blinked violently, illuminating Erasma's mother in a shimmering glow. "You owe me, Antenor. You know where it all ends." With that declaration, Erasma felt the pull, a magnetism drawing her towards her mother. It was bewildering, exhilarating. She fought against the raw pain of loss. "Wait, what is happening?" she shouted. The ground shook more violently, and in the frenzy, another explosion rocked the building. The ceiling cracked, revealing glimpses of the fiery chaos outside. Time slowed, moments blurred, and Erasma barely processed the violent energy radiating from her mother. But then, as a roar filled the room, the truth crashed down like the debris around them. "No!" Mr. Antenor screamed, scrambling back. "It was never about you. It was about her." Erasma froze, realization piercing through her chaos. "What do you mean?" Then, before she could digest the words, the ground beneath her split open completely. Erasma reached for her mother, but the crack widened, drawing her in. A sharp pull gripped her, and as she stumbled forward, darkness enveloped her, dragging her into a chasm of secrets. The last image she saw before being swallowed whole was of her mother's fierce determination, eyes filled with unshed tears. "Find the truth." Her voice echoed, and just like that, everything she'd known shifted again. What truth? What had her mother carried in that shadowed past? As Erasma fell into the depths, an unrelenting question echoed in her mind. Was her mother truly here, or had she been another illusion in a long game of survival? As Erasma was pulled into the darkness, a cold wind swept around her, and she was enveloped by an echoing silence. The fear that gripped her heart was replaced by a strange sensation, a swell of anger and determination. The weight of her past surged up to meet her. Then came a sudden brightness, blinding her for a moment. When her vision cleared, she found herself not in a hidden chamber or nightmare, but standing in a small, cluttered room, familiar, yet utterly foreign. It was filled with boxes labeled with names she hadn't thought of in years. Under the flickering light, she recognized wedding dresses, framed photos, and letters tied with faded ribbons. Her breath caught as she took a step forward, peering at the images. There was her mother, smiling radiantly at her wedding. Beside her stood a tall man with the same dark curls that Erasma had inherited. But beneath the joyful grin of her father were shadows of secrets she never knew. A lump formed in her throat. "Mom," she whispered, feeling the heat behind her eyes. "What is this place?" Just then, a shadow flickered in the corner. It coalesced into the ethereal figure of her mother. Erasma's heart pounded. "You needed to find this." Her mother's voice rang softly, yet strongly, echoing with an urgency that vibrated through the room. "Find what? Why did you hide all this?" Erasma demanded, frustration rising as she felt the world teetering on the edge of comprehension. "I was trying to protect you," her mother replied, her expression grave. "But I see now, the truth cannot stay buried forever." Erasma stepped closer, desperate for answers. "What truth?" Before her mother could respond, the walls trembled. The room quaked and dust swirled in the air. The light dimmed and the room felt dangerously alive. Erasma's pulse quickened. "We've got to go." But her mother remained, eyes fixed on her, expression unreadable. "You can't run from this, Erasma. You have to face what's been hidden." Then, in a flash, the room shifted again. This time, the atmosphere grew heavy with desperation. The very fabric of space turned and pulled, and reality cracked. Suddenly, Erasma was flung backward, gasping for breath as she landed hard on the cold floor of an unfamiliar place. The air was crackling with energy, buzzing like a live wire. Shadows danced around her, twisting with whispers of familiarity. Horrified, she realized she was back in the room with Benny, still grasping his fading strength on the floor. But now she sensed another presence. Turning, she saw a figure emerge from the shadows, someone she never expected to see again. "Daniel!" Erasma's gasp echoed through the chaotic space. It was her older brother, lost, presumed dead for years. Her heart raced in shock as she took in his worn features, eyes reflecting pain and confusion. She stumbled over her words, trying to process the impossible. "I know," he interrupted, stepping closer, tension thick in the air. "I'm sorry for everything, but we don't have time." The chaos surged around them, pulses of energy rattling the walls. "The truth binds us all," Daniel continued, desperation lining his voice. "There's so much you don't understand. Mom knew she was part of it." "What? What are you saying?" Erasma felt the ground shift beneath her again, emotions swirling. "It's not just about Antoner," Daniel rushed, the words spilling out beneath the mounting pressure. "He's part of a bigger game, one started long before us." With that, the world exploded into chaos again as an unseen force tore through the room. Erasma felt like she was caught in a tornado of revelations, and all her previous beliefs about family, love, and loyalty shattered around her. Could it be true? Had her family ties only been a mask for something horrific? As the shadows twisted ominously, she locked eyes with her brother, a shared fear pulsing between them. "What do we do?" she asked, panic clawing at her throat. The walls echoed with the laughter of Mr. Antoner, dark and mocking, and Erasma's heart pounded as reality warped around them once more. If they were caught in this web, how far would they truly have to go to uncover the truth? What if the line between good and evil was not what she believed? Before she could grasp it all, darkness loomed again, and as the ground beneath them trembled once more, Erasma couldn't shake the feeling that this time there would be no escape. As the darkness loomed, Erasma felt a tremor ripple through her. Daniel stood there, a strong presence, but the chaos surrounding them amplified her confusion. "What do you mean Mom was part of it?" she stammered, unwilling to believe the implications. Before he could respond, the walls bucked and groaned as if the very structure were alive. Erasma's pulse quickened. They were running out of time. "Daniel, we need a plan. This place is—" A loud crash interrupted her, the room shaking violently. The floor split open, and dust poured in like an avalanche. Erasma instinctively grabbed Daniel's arm, her heart racing. But in that instant, a shattering figure appeared. A woman stepped through the swirling chaos, her features obscured by smoke. The air thickened, and Erasma's heart dropped as recognition hit her. Mom, but this wasn't the mom she remembered. This was someone with fire in her eyes, filled with rage and power. "You think the truth isn't worth the fight?" Karen's voice boomed, echoing through the chaos. "I won't let them take you." As Erasma stared, heart-pounding, she felt a jolt of recognition toward the tumultuous presence. This was a woman transformed, not just a mother but a force. "Mom, what is happening?" Erasma's voice cracked. "Why are you here?" "I'm here to end this," her mom replied, voice steady and fierce. "You're stronger than any of us ever realized. You can break the cycle." But before Erasma could respond, Mr. Antoner's mocking laughter filled the air as he emerged from the shadows. "Always the hero, aren't you, Karen? Your little family won't escape this," he sneered, brandishing a weapon, tainted with blood that only he could explain. At that moment, an intense flash of light engulfed them, blinding and powerful. Erasma instinctively shielded her eyes, and when the world came back into focus, she found herself in a completely different place. A stark, sterile room filled with monitors and buzzing machines. "What? Where are we?" She looked around, dread filling her. Beside her stood Daniel, eyes wide, disbelief woven into his features. This looks like a lab," he stammered, glancing at the screens. Erasma's pulse quickened. "What happened? Where's Mom? Where's Antoner?" Daniel turned, his expression shifting from shock to fear. "Erasma, I think we were pulled into some kind of alternate reality." Suddenly, a voice crackled through the intercom, icy and familiar. "Welcome, Erasma. Welcome, Daniel," it hissed. Erasma's skin prickled. It was Antoner, but somehow more menacing. "You thought you could run. No family escapes their past, especially not you." At that instant, a door slid open behind them. A flood of figures poured in, medical staff wearing lab coats and grim expressions, each one fixated on Erasma and Daniel. She gasped, taking a step back as the clarity hit her. They weren't just workers. They looked like people she knew, friends, neighbors, distant relatives. "Why are you here?" she demanded, heart racing. One of the figures stepped forward. "Erasma, you've been part of this experiment since birth. You and everyone in our families," they said, eyes shining with tears. "We're all connected to this legacy. The truth is far darker than you can ever imagine." Erasma's world spun. "What do you mean?" But before she could absorb it, a painful realization struck her like a blow, breaking her concentration. "Daniel," she whispered, eyes wide, "is that joke about us being subjects real?" He nodded slowly, horror etched in his face. "They lied to us, Erasma. It was always about control. And Mom," she knew how deep it ran. As the room closed in, the whispers of betrayal wrapped around Erasma like chains. The truth, they were all part of a twisted legacy, an experiment meant to create something more than human. Could they unravel it? Was freedom even an option? And as the shadows danced in the sterile light, questions hung thick in the air, pulsing with urgency. How deep did this twisted family tree go, and what price would she have to pay to find out the truth? As the air crackled with tension, Erasma felt as if she was balancing on the edge of a precipice. Questions raced through her mind. Why was Mom here? What did all of this mean? The sterile lab was alive with murmurs and movements, and she could see the concern in Daniel's eyes. But before she could voice another question, the ground shook again and the lights flickered ominously. "Get down!" Someone yelled. It was a figure among the shadows, someone she barely recognized. It was Trina, her longtime neighbor and childhood friend, standing at the back of the room, her face pale and frantic. "They're coming!" A cold bolt of fear shot through Erasma. "Who's coming?" "Agents," Trina gasped, her voice trembling. "They're here for us, they found us." The panic in her voice was infectious. Suddenly, heavy footsteps thudded outside the door and a chill crept up Erasma's spine. Her heart raced. The stakes were rising, and everything felt like it was spiraling out of control. "We have to move," she urged, grabbing Daniel's arm. But before they could take another step, the door burst open. Men clad in black tactical gear flooded into the room, faces obscured by helmets. They scanned the space, guns drawn and expressions cold. "Don't move," a deep voice commanded. "Erasma Antoner, you're under arrest." "Arrest? For what?" she shouted, disbelief washing over her. "Conspiracy," was all they said in unison. Their voices sent a chill down her spine. That's when she caught sight of a figure lingering at the back of the room, someone she hadn't noticed before. Her heart sank as the last remnant of hope crumbled within her. It was her father, Mr. Antoner, somehow standing there, alive and smirking. "They were right all along, Erasma," he taunted, his voice low and mocking. "You're just a pawn in a much larger game. Dad, but you died." She gasped, clenching her fists. "Did you really think I'd let something as trivial as death keep me from what's mine?" His eyes gleamed with a twisted satisfaction. "You, Daniel, and all of this, it was never a coincidence." Erasma felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her. "You've controlled us, all of us." She could hardly speak, the words tumbling out as disbelief morphed into horror. "Of course," he spat, walking closer. "I orchestrated everything. The lies, the secrets. And now, the agents have come to clean up what you've uncovered. You're in way over your head." In that instant, the world around her shattered. Everything she believed, the moments of her life, the love she felt for her family, her very identity, had been built on a web of manipulation. "Get down." Daniel yelled again as the agents moved to grab Erasma. She felt adrenaline surge through her body. She couldn't be a pawn anymore. Before she could act, something unexpected happened. Trina lunged at the nearest agent, knocking him off balance. "Run!" she shouted, and chaos erupted. Shots rang out and the sterile air turned electric with fear. "Go. We need to find a way out." Daniel grabbed Erasma's hand, pulling her toward the door. But as they stumbled out into the hallway, a deafening explosion shook the building, ripping the floor apart beneath them. Erasma and Daniel fell, the world collapsing around them. As they tumbled into the unknown, her mother's words echoed in Erasma's mind. "Find the truth." But what was the truth? Had her entire life been an elaborate illusion? The pieces were still swirling in confusion, but the revelation of her father's deception sent shockwaves through her heart. As the darkness consumed them, she couldn't shake the feeling that something even deeper was buried within her family's secrets. What lay ahead was not just a flight from danger, but a quest to reclaim everything she was meant to be. And as the dust settled and the echoes of chaos faded, one question burned brighter than the rest. Could she ever truly escape the legacy of Mr. Antoner? As the dust began to settle, Erasma's heart raced, pounding painfully against her ribcage. The world around her shifted, But it was Daniel's startled face that pulled her focus back into the present. They had been caught in a tumult of chaos, but this new glimpse into their family's twisted reality felt like a heavy, suffocating blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders. "Mom!" she called out, but the ethereal figure of her mother flickered like a faulty light bulb, casting uncertain shadows. Just behind them, Mr. Antoner's mocking laughter echoed ominously. It was too intense, too overwhelming. There was no escaping the chaos that surrounded them. "Run!" Daniel urged urgently, but the ground trembled beneath them, and they lost their footing momentarily. Erasma felt a surge of panic. Was this it? Would they be swallowed whole into the darkness of their family's secrets? Every moment stretched into eternity. All around them, the agents surged further into the room, faces hardened with determination. "Time to end this," one of them called out, stepping closer. Erasma's blood ran cold, but just as desperation threatened to consume her, everything changed with a blinding flash. The ceiling above caved in with a crack that shook her to her core. A rush of noise, of screaming voices and the crash of falling debris engulfed Erasma. As she stumbled through the chaos, she caught a glimpse of Daniel being pulled back by two agents, their grips tight and merciless. "Daniel!" she shouted, reaching out. But just as she did, the space erupted into blinding light. Then came silence. When the dust settled again, Erasma found herself standing alone in an eerie calm. It was as if the chaos had avoided her completely. She stood in a different room now, white walls, sterile and cold. It looked like a hospital room, but it felt wrong. There were no indicators of how she had arrived here or where the others had gone. "Hello!" she called out cautiously. A deep, echoing silence followed. Fear twisted in her stomach. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. Erasma's breath hitched as she saw who it was. "Benny," she whispered, disbelief sweeping through her, but he looked different, disheveled, eyes haunted. "Thank God you're here," he exclaimed, rushing over. There was urgency in his voice, and the moment felt charged, electric. "I was looking for you. We need to talk. It's about your mother." "What do you mean?" she stammered, confusion clawing at her. "Where are we? What happened to Daniel?" "Daniel. He's in danger," Benny replied quickly, glancing over his shoulder, heart racing. "The agents, they're not who you think. They want something from you, but before he could finish, a door swung open with a deafening bang. The figure that entered took her breath away. It was her mother, Karen, but she looked different, pale, worn, and somehow more real than ever. "Erasma, you don't understand," she shouted. "Mom." Erasma rushed forward, feeling an overwhelming need to connect. "What's happening? Where's Daniel?" But Karen's eyes were filled with intensity that sent a shiver down Erasma's spine. "You have to know the truth," she said, and in her voice was an urgency that hinted at something deeply buried. "Daniel isn't just your brother, he's—" Suddenly, a raucous alarm blared, filling the room with a piercing sound. The lights flickered wildly, and a panic surged through Erasma's veins. "No, what is it?" she cried, desperation rising. Just as they braced for chaos, the ground quaked violently beneath them. Then the walls began to peel like paper. In a frantic whirlwind, Erasma's mind raced. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. From the shadows, the room erupted, the wallpaper tearing and revealing hidden compartments. Inside them were files, her family's secrets, documents labeled with names and dates she recognized but couldn't fathom. Benny staggered back, and her mother's expression shifted into one of pure horror. "No," Karen shouted, her voice cracking. "It can't be." But the room began to distort, bending into shapes that didn't make sense. "Mom, what's going on?" Erasma screamed, confusion and fear engulfing her. Karen turned to her daughter, pleading. "You have to understand. We were part of an experiment, a breeding ground for something more. Daniel is not just a brother. He's part of a genetic legacy built on manipulation." The revelation hit Erasma like a storm, heavy and consuming. "What do you mean?" She gasped, her heart racing. The truth unleashed a torrent of emotions, leaving her reeling. A final tremor shook the foundation of the room as figures emerged from the shadows. Tall, imposing, their faces hidden, they brandished devices that buzzed with energy. "Your mother has been keeping secrets," one of them said, voice low and menacing. It's time you learned the real truth about your lineage. And before Erasma could respond, everything spiraled into darkness, physically and mentally, leaving her with a single, chilling question echoing in her mind. Who am I really? As Erasma stood in the sterile room, her heart pounded in her chest. The shadows danced around her, the figures of agents looming closer. The air buzzed with tension, and every instinct told her to run. But then, everything changed in a split second. The intercom crackled again, but this time it didn't sound like Mr. Antoner. A new voice filled the air, matronly yet strong. "Stop right there!" Everyone froze. Erasma turned, eyes wide, as a woman strode confidently into the room. She wore a lab coat, her hair swept back neatly. The chaos fell silent. Her deep brown eyes locked onto Erasma's, filled with a fierce determination. "Mom!" Erasma breathed, disbelief rushing through her veins. But, before she could finish, her mother held up her hand. "Not here, not now. There's no time to explain how I got here, but I know everything." The agents shifted uneasily, the tension thickening. "Step aside, Karen," one agent barked, eyes narrowing at her. "You have no jurisdiction here." The woman's jaw clenched. "I'm not here for you, I'm here for my daughter." Erasma listened closely. Her voice cracked, revealing a hint of fear beneath the confidence. "It wasn't just the experiment, there's been a much bigger plan." "What plan?" Panic gripped Erasma's heart. Karen took a deep breath, and the weight of years hung between them. "You were never just a subject in this experiment, Erasma. You were chosen because you're exceptional, and so is Daniel." The floor trembled again. This was too much. "What do you mean?" Erasma's voice shook. Just then, a loud bang echoed through the facility. The ground shook violently, throwing everyone off balance. Erasma stumbled backward, her heart racing. Dust rained down from the ceiling, and the alarms blared louder. "Get out!" Karen shouted, eyes wide with urgency. "They're coming for us." But as they turned to flee, the room erupted in chaos. Figures in black suited up in tactical gear stormed in, rifles raised. The sight sent adrenaline coursing through Erasma. "They're here!" she cried. Amidst the chaos, an enormous blast of light erupted, enveloping them like an explosion. Erasma shielded her eyes, and when she opened them, everything had shifted again. She was nowhere near the sterile room, but in a hazy, dreamlike landscape. Bizarre colors and shifting shapes surrounded her. In shock, she looked around, trying to understand what had just happened. Panic clawed in her throat. "Mom!" Daniel. Before she could grasp her surroundings, a voice rang out, familiar yet chilling. "We were counting on you, Erasma." A figure stepped forward, and her heart dropped when she recognized the face. It was her father, Mr. Antoner, but he had a different look, more youthful, more sinister. "It seems you've uncovered the first layer of the truth." "What?" She gasped, disbelief washing over her. "You're dead." He laughed, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. "Did you really think I would let this unfold without an escape plan?" He gestured around them. "Welcome to the Nexus, where the past meets the future." Erasma felt herself gaping in confusion as the reality around her morphed again. "What do you want?" she shouted, trembling. "Your power," he replied, his voice smooth and commanding. "There's more to you than you know, more than any of us could have predicted." Then, without warning, he raised his hand, and the air crackled with energy. A blinding flash erupted, throwing Erasma back. She landed hard, gasping for air, and in that instant everything darkened. And then it hit her. She was trapped in a cycle, caught between her family's web of lies and manipulation. Time stretched as darkness enveloped her. "Mom!" Daniel. She screamed, but only silence answered. The truth, her truth, was slipping through her fingers. Where was she? What did her father mean? And most frighteningly, how could she break free from this twisted legacy? The answers swirled just out of reach, and Erasma knew she had to find them. The question burned inside her. Was she destined to repeat the dark history of her family, or could she forge her own path? Erasma felt the darkness swirling around her, but something inside her flickered with defiance. She refused to let fear win this time. Breathing deeply, she faced her father, the man who had haunted her memories, the architect of her pain. "You can't control me anymore," she stated firmly, the tremor in her voice replaced by determination. Mr. Antoner's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, she saw a glimpse of the weak man he truly was. The room trembled as if the very structure was responding to her newfound strength. "You think this is a game?" He sneered, but there was uncertainty in his eyes. "Let's find out," she challenged, stepping forward. The air crackled with electricity between them. Just then, the alarms started blaring again, drowning out their confrontation in a chaotic wave of urgency. The agents were still there, and Erasma could see their faces. Some were terrified, others resolute. "Mom," she shouted, hoping Karen would be there, hoping for security. The shadows shifted, and there she was, stepping out of the haze. "Erasma, follow me." Her mother's voice rang like a lighthouse cutting through fog. Karen gestured, and together with Benny and Daniel, they rushed to her side, forming a united front. "We can take him," Karen said fiercely, locking eyes with Erasma. Together. The agents moved closer, but chaos erupted again. The ceiling cracked, debris fell, and the lights flickered violently. The moment felt surreal, time stretched into an eternity as the world around them twisted. "Now!" Karen commanded, and together they charged toward the door. Erasma's heart raced as they burst through, leaving Mr. Antoner behind. They ran down a narrow corridor, the floor shaking beneath them. Each pounding step echoed louder than her fears. "We need to get to the exit," Benny urged, glancing over his shoulder. "What about my dad?" Erasma's heart ached at the thought. He's still my father." "No," Daniel replied urgently. "He's a monster. This is bigger than him." The truth struck like a lightning bolt. She would never be chained by his darkness again. They sprinted, propelled by adrenaline and the strength of their bond. Colorful flashes lit up the hallway, a visual symphony of chaos as allies became enemies in the blink of an eye. Shadows danced in the corners, but Erasma kept pushing forward. At last they reached the exit, a heavy steel door, blaring noise pounding behind them. Karen stepped up. "This is it. We must break free, all of us." With one strong push, they slammed through the doorway, tumbling into the night air. Freedom and fresh air wrapped around them like a warm embrace. But as they turned to catch their breath, Erasma realized it wasn't over. It was just beginning. In front of them, a town was in turmoil. Fires burned, people screamed, but in that ruin there was a flicker of hope. Erasma looked at her mother, brother, and Benny, emotions swirling wildly. They'd persevered against unimaginable odds. "Together," she whispered, her voice steady. "We can rebuild." But as they turned to escape the chaos behind them, the ground shook one last time, pulling their attention back toward the destruction. Something dark loomed, more terrifying than her father, a shadow of the twisted legacy they had just escaped. Could they finally confront the true source of the terror? The shadow beckoned, full of secrets still untold. Erasma's heart raced anew. She could feel it. Freedom was within reach, but the battle wasn't over. As the mystery unfolded, she couldn't shake the questions spiraling in her mind. What awaited on the other side of that darkness? If you felt the intensity of this tale, you must subscribe now and don't wait another second. Click that like button now to feed the algorithm and make sure this story reaches everyone who needs to hear it. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What could possibly come next? And don't forget to share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know how it ends. Now is the time to show your support. Only true fans understand the importance of acting fast.